So we have the approval of the minutes from the June 25th meeting. Minutes are attached. Was there anybody here who was at the June 25th meeting?
Is this where you made the budget presentation? Is this where you made the budget
I wasn't.
presentation?
Oh, this budget.
Yeah, this
I will
is,
second.
I don't think so.
I see
We talked
Rod
about
was
the
there, Mary Aaron
approval.
was there.
Second.
Okay.
Okay. I guess I will.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay. So, for today's Brac meeting, we thought we would, okay, so entering is David LeClaire, representing Management Association. Hey David, how are you?
Good, very good, thank you.
So for today, one thing that we thought we would add to the agenda and actually present is the same budget presentation that we gave to the Board of Trustees when we took the 2015-16 adopted budget to them for approval. And this was at the September 2nd, 2015 meeting. And the reason why we're going to do this is because it provides a good overview of what the state situation is as of that time, and also it's a good opportunity to do an overview of our budget. Now,
I didn't already see it. Okay.
there's packets. Can someone pass down one of those packets for me,
Sure.
please? Did everybody get one of those, even though David's got one? David, there's room at the seat,
Oh.
at the table up here, if you want. So everybody should have one of those packets
Yeah.
in their hands. If they don't have one,
Could I have
everybody
one?
should have one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. You have one over there?
No.
Rob,
the first, everybody's got one, okay. The first 8 pages is the adopted budget summary document. And I think what we're gonna do is we'll defer the discussion of this until after the PowerPoint. But if there's any questions that come up during the PowerPoint discussion or presentation, the answers may lie in these 8 pages, and either Diane or Joe or I or LaConya will take a shot at answering the questions that you might have. Also, during the course of the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me, interrupt, and let's just see if we can have a discussion at that point in time. So I'll just start by saying that these first 8 pages is the overall summary of our income and expense for the 01 unrestricted general fund. Okay? So, first of all, a little bit of a highlights from a statewide budget presentation that several of us, including Rod, was there, Diane was there, participated, and LaConya was there, participated in back on July 30th at San Bernardino Valley College. Okay, so some highlights. All right, so some big picture stuff. For the state as a whole, the fiscal budget is $115 billion, and that includes a reserve of $3.4 billion. This is the state of California. For us, an important piece of information is that for first time in several years, there are no mid-year or what's known as trigger cuts anticipated, which means what they give us is what we're going to get. And in past years, due to the economic downturn, that was not always the case. Mid-year being defined as January, February, they would let us know that unfortunately we cannot pay you everything that we expected to pay you, so we wish you the best. But that's not going to happen in 15-16. The trend of a general fund revenue surpassing estimates continues. This is the ongoing discussion between the Department of Finance and the Legislative Analyst's Office. The LAO continues to predict greater revenues than the Governor Department of Finance Office states, which means that per that second to last bullet, the LAO is predicting $3.1 billion in additional revenues for 13-14 through 15-16. And so what this essentially means is that there likely will be additional one-time funds available at the end of this year, as there was leading into 16-17.
And what's
More on
the-
that talk in a second.
We usually get a kind of standard
Well,
of that?
the community college system gets 11% of the overall allocation that goes to K through 14.
Okay.
We get about 1.9% of that
Okay,
as a college, as a
Okay.
district. Okay?
typical.
Now, the big picture. Again, the final budget is based on the governor's more conservative revenue. The approach is intended to protect the state from the boom and bust budgeting cycle. Now, what that means is that California is based primarily on income tax, and when times are good and the high earners are earning a great deal of money, either directly in compensation or in investments or what have you, taxes go up. When the economy is in the toilet, then the revenue for those high wage earners is dramatically less, and the state is impacted by that. In other words, many states have a variety of other taxing and other revenue generating models that provide a more even amount of funding through the good times and the bad times. California is what they call a boom and bust cycle. We are now currently in a boom phase, having come out of a very serious bust cycle for several years there. The Governor Brown, he is about protecting against the boom and bust cycles, which is why he is trying to put money into a rainy day fund. He's about retiring the significant debt that the state accumulated during those difficult years, and he's about adding all of his new money to education, primarily K through 14 education, with some monies to CSU and UC, but primarily he's about supporting K through 14, and we are grades 13, 14 community colleges. Okay, so what happened to community colleges in terms of this budget? Well, overall, they provided an additional $156 million for what's known as access, otherwise known as growth money. There is a new growth allocation formula, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but it caps our growth at 2.55% this year. In recent years, in order to restore lost FTS and also to take advantage of growth, PCC grew much more significantly. Last year we grew at about 12%, as I recall. Years before that we grew about 9% as we were trying to catch up. But this year we are making sure that we do not exceed our growth beyond the 2.55. It's the governor calling saying,
The check is in the mail.
check it.
It was just my mom, she was checking.
I was gonna say that.
This year, we're watching our growth very, very, very carefully because we know we're not going to get funded for much more than 2.55%, although there's a possibility we might get a little bit more from things we've seen recently, but we're still going to be very conservative based upon our cost, our budgeting realities. Yes, ma'am?
Is that a similar, is a cap similar at other schools?
Yes. In fact, ours represents 2.55. The growth ranges from a low of like 1% to a high of maybe 6 or 7%. With the more rural colleges where they feel that they need more money so they can grow greater or faster than some of the more urban ones. To develop access.
Okay.
Problem is they don't have the people up there to grow.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
but so it's a little crazy, and that 2.55 is up from 1.1. So a bunch of superintendent presidents and chancellors, of which I was one last year, worked very hard to have that growth allocation formula revised so that the urban infill institutions like ours that draw students from a wide variety. There's a very interesting graphic that Crystal Colrus and her team just created that's based on GIS that shows very specifically where our students come from. Well, we know over 70% of our students come from outside of our district, but when you see based upon the GIS technology where that is, they come from a long, long way away, many of them. So the bottom line is that to peg the growth only to your service area when you serve so beyond your service area is what brought us down to that 1.1%. So based upon the adjustments we were able to make, in our case, we went from 1.1 cap to 2.55. That capping is going to be a problem for us from a budget point of view going forward if they keep telling us we can only grow so much, because we get a lot of our additional money from growth. But that's another topic. But it is an economic factor that's going to that's going to impact us as we go forward, as is the onslaught of performance-based funding. This is like getting the camel's nose into the tent, this growth allocation formula. It's basically saying we're only going to pay you for a certain amount of growth that's tied to very certain things. Basic skills attainment needs, labor force needs, percentage of high school graduation in your area. I mean, there's a whole bunch of factors that relate very specifically to your district that is basically saying we're going to pay you for these things and only these things. That's what your growth is. The good news is that 2.55 is not stuck only to those particular parameters. They're basically saying you can grow anywhere you want, but they're beginning to say to us, but know that we are going to start funding you on the basis of completion, on the basis of basic skills attainment, on the basis of workforce, of employment, workforce readiness, and employment in industry that is in your backyard. So if PCC decided to open up a wine making thing, and the closest winery is up in, down south in, Old Town, but I mean real
Santa
wineries.
Barbara.
Either up north in Santa Barbara or down south in Temecula. They're going to say, well, we're not going to fund your winemaking thing because you don't manufacture wine in your area, if you will. So it's those kinds of things that we think are coming down the pike to worry about, but not right now. COLA, cost of living allowance, $61 million for the state, 1.02%. General operating increase, base increase to workload and basic allocation rate. So when we talk about FTES and what they pay us per FTES, that's also known as the base allocation rate. So that was increased 4.65%, approximately $4.7 million to PCC. That took our credit FTS from roughly 4,600 to just over 4,900, or just under about $200 and something more FTS. And that number is still floating, believe it or not, and we should know with certainty pretty soon. Then, I'm not going to read all those, but the categorical programs are in front of you there, and there were significant funding increases to all those categoricals. The 2% rule, the 1.9% rule, does not relate in all areas to those categoricals. There's other funding formulas that relate to that. So we might get a little bit more, we might get a little bit less than 2%, depending on the particular formula tied to that categorical program. But they all saw significant increases. Our triple SP, let's see, what's our triple SP up to now? Does anybody remember?
Dollar amount?
Yeah, annual.
So
1.3.
that was our first draw.
Mhm.
I thought it was about $3 million, and then we have to do a dollar for dollar match. 1.3 match.
Yeah.
So for every dollar we get, we have to put up $1.30.
That's right.
The bucket for us was about $3 million.
Yeah, we'll have to look at that number, but it's somewhere in that range right now. And then we have equity dollars as well, but there's no match for that. The equity is about 1.2. It was 1.8, but I think it dropped. But it's somewhere between 1.2 and 1.8 million. And then institutional effectiveness partnership initiative, which we are not engaged in right now. All right, now we also had 148 million, about 2.9 million of that goes to PCC for deferred maintenance and instructional equipment. Specifically, you'll see it later, but specifically we provided just over $1 million for instructional equipment for 15-16 that Dr. Scott and her deans got to allocate, working with their faculty. And the balance of that went to deferred maintenance. Just FYI, we have about $99 million of deferred maintenance on this campus. Ocean knows about 98 million of that himself personally. We have a lot of deferred maintenance on this campus. But we got from the state this additional money to help with that. About $95 million went for what's known as system deferrals. This is more of an accounting, bookkeeping thing. It was not cash to PCC, but it does pay off deferrals. This is money that we got through other means that they're basically keeping from us, but it basically makes us even. But it's actually not cash that we have to operate with. Then we got the one-time payment of about $12.4 million out of a pool of about $632 million for mandates, for unfunded mandates from years gone by. They decided to allocate that on a per FTS basis, so we got a one-time fund of $12.4 million, which we will show you how we allocated that in a few minutes. Then through Proposition 39, which is the sustainability, about $38 million, about $650,000 to PCC. And there was no tuition increase or student fee increase. So what's new? Well, first of all, for the first time in many, many years, they actually funded new faculty positions. So in our case, it comes to about 9 positions. It's about $1.2 million of ongoing monies that we'll get to fund these positions going forward. Those fund numbers are a little bit loose because we're still calculating them, but that's roughly at the time we put this budget together, we saw 404 by July 1 of 16 and about 414 by July 1 of 17. Currently we're sitting at about 368, I think the number is, of faculty, full-time faculty that we have. So we're looking at a significant number of new faculty for next year, but I want to say, that says 378, and that's about right, so it's 370, I said 368. But it's a floating number, the state's still working with it. A lot of a lot of districts are having a lot of trouble with the way the state has done the calculations. We should know soon as exactly where we're going to land on that. But we're going to need to hire a bunch of faculty for fall of 16, okay? And we'll get a number here somewhere in the near future. Baccalaureate program, there's money for that. We were not one of the, I think it was 7 or 9 pilot districts. We were not one of them, so we are not going to be offering a baccalaureate program. The next opportunity to offer a baccalaureate program is somewhere in 2021 or 2022, which is when the current pilot will run out, so it's some years out. And then the Cal Grant is additional money for our students from a financial aid point of view. Okay, there's some cautions and concerns. The Education Protection Act is temporary. It's also known as Prop 30. The sales tax portion of that ends at the end of 2016. And the income tax portion of that ends at the end of 2018. To PCC, we are now sitting at about $19 million for EPA dollars. So that's a concern that if that goes away and the state does not backfill that money, we have a $19 million hole to fill. The good news is that there's at least 2 ballot initiatives that are being put forth for the November 16 ballot that would backfill a good portion of the EPA dollars, one of which through the Public Policy Institute they did a poll, and at the moment it's looking like it would pass, but there's a long way to go.
So when you say backfill, is this some other means, or are they just extending the
It's another means.
revenue? Okay.
It's another proposition that is not sales tax and income tax. I think the one that is one that relies more heavily on income tax for high wage earners, the $250,000 per year people. But I don't think the sales tax is part of that. But it's another one, because basically everybody recognizes that if that goes away, every district is going to, and K-12, everybody is going to be in a massive hole. So, but that's a caution going forward. Then the biggest issue for everyone is the STRS and PERS increases. And we'll show you a chart a little bit later, but as you can see in bolded in that last paragraph, for STRS, we go from 5.1 million at the end of 13-14 to 9.6 in 18-19, and we have another chart later that shows, I think, through 2021, and it's like 11 million or something. So that's like a $6 million increase. That is a very short way away, annual increase. On PERS, we go from 2.8 to 4.2. And that goes out a little bit further too when you see the chart later on in the presentation. So these are significant ongoing expenses that at the moment, other than that one-time money, there is really not any other relief in sight at the moment. So, once in a lifetime, that's what they tried to say to us, that a budget like this comes around, quote unquote, once in a lifetime. This is really one of the best community college budgets that we've seen in 30 or so years. So everybody celebrate that. But recessions happen, and when they happen, particularly in a boom and bust state, the state crashes pretty hard, pretty fast. The other thing is, we've all enjoyed these additional bumps based upon Prop 98. As income goes up, the amount of money that is distributed as a result of Prop 98 goes up as well. However, there's something known as a maintenance factor that the state had to basically defer monies from Prop 98 payments during the bad times, and they called that a maintenance factor, and now they've been paying people off for that, which means that the allocations we've gotten for Prop 98 have been higher than what they would normally be. That is going to stabilize by the end of 16-17. So we're not going to see those big additional chunks of money come in. It'll just be a normal budgeting cycle per se. That's kind of what they mean by that. So what I'm saying is, 14-15 we saw a nice bump, 15-16 we will likely see a nice bump, 16-17 we will see a bump. I don't know how large it'll be, but from 17-18 forward it's going to level off just like everything else levels off. So these are great fiscal times, but they may not last. We have to plan for the downturn. We talked about the Educational Protection Act, talked about the STRS-PERS issue. We haven't talked about health care. Our health care, we've all heard this 1,000 times, has been increasing at very large double-digit amounts for the last several years. We have a benefits committee that's hard at work and beginning to deal with that, and we appreciate their work. Other employee-mandated expenses are increasing, whether it's workers' comp, whether it's Social Security, whether it's state unemployment insurance, whether it is, what else, SDI, disability insurance, all those things. Those things continue to go up significantly. We too need to build back our reserves for our own rainy day fund, and we are doing a great job of focusing on enrollment and management efficiencies. Dr. Scott, her deans, Dr. Gerald, others are really doing good work in that regard, and it's beginning to pay off. But that's what we're going to have to do in order to have enough money to keep us going, and for us all to be fairly compensated and well benefited. If that's a word. It is, but not in that context. You look at Mary Aaron say, English teacher, where is he talking about? How does this guy? How did he get that job? Next recession, when and how severe? I won't go through this, but that's basically, you can see it there. There are any kinds of things that could happen around the world that could cause things to change and go south in a big way. During the last economic downturn, we had no layoffs, we had no furloughs, we kept it together. Many districts, many colleges were not able to do that. We did because we had enough money set aside to help us get through the difficult times. So this is just a reminder that we should think in terms of the next downturn and what we might want to do to prepare for it. Okay, so now we get into the nitty-gritty of actually our budget. And Joe provided this overview to the board. This is the precursor to that. Our beginning balance, in other words, what we rolled over from 14-15 to start 15-16, was $12.5 million. In 15-16, we were projecting local revenues, $145 million. Federal, remember, this is the 01 general fund, so that federal was basically some indirect monies and things, correct? That we get off of some of our federal money. And then we've got state lottery funds. So basically, we had available coming in $148 million. When you add the beginning balance, you see the $160 million, give or take, as our 01 general fund operating. When you add up everything there is to have in the college, including all of our funds, which includes financial aid, we're about a $250 million a year operation. Yes.
Can I just point out this, the state and local revenue, that $145 million includes the $12.5 million of one-time dollars. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that the ongoing money is about 132.2.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because we had that one-time $12 million. Okay, now, this eye test, which I can't really see very well from here, is just it is on page, what is it, page 14?
14.
Basically, this is a kind of a higher level summary of where our revenues comes from, and we start with the 14-15 adjusted with Proposition 30, because you might recall that in Prop 30, the way we treated it is not necessarily ongoing money, but money that is here for a certain period of time. So we basically say, always remember the Prop 30 dollars are in there. We had the adjusted, then we had the actual when all the dust settled, so to speak. And then we had the proposed budget for 15-16. So you can see what our revenue is. You can see in broad categories, and again, it's those 8 pages that break this out, what the expenditures are by major category. You can see that we call the revenue over under expenditures of $3.3 million. We've since gone back to the board and reclassified that as additional contingency monies to be compliant with our the accounting manual, the community college's accounting manual. Then you see the fund balance of the beginning balance of $12,400,000, and then that 3.6, and so you see that we have a projected fund balance at the end of 15-16 of $16 million. Now, within that $16 million is the 12 million. No, it's not. It is the 12,050,000 reserve, right, and the contingency money. So this board, and you've heard me say this before, this board long time ago established $12,050,000 as their hard set-aside reserve. They also adopted this notion of a floating contingency amount of money to deal with anything that might come up, even though when we use that money we have to go back to the board and request permission to use that money, but still we're sitting with an operating contingency within, operating reserve / contingency within 01 this year of approximately $16 million, give or take. Okay? So, and what percentage is reserves?
I think we're about 13%.
We're about 13%. And even though there's at least one person running for the Board of Trustees who says that 13% is drastically below what other districts are, we're not. We are right smack where we should be in the middle. The state requires 5%. We're sitting at 13%. We've been as high as 16.
We were at, I think, 18 2 years ago or last year, 18.
Yeah, but now that we've got the raises and everything done, and 13 is not a bad place to be. Okay, I would not be happy at 5. I would not be happy at under 10, but I'm okay at 13. But
As a start.
I'm one contract away from being fired anyway, so it doesn't really matter, right? So. And I think my contract's up now that I think about it. So anyway, all right. So now let's sort of talk about the new fund revenue. So PCC got 1.13 of COLA, okay, million. We got 2.7 of the restoration. That's what that 2.51% represents.
And actually, that's incorrect. The earlier slide of 2.55% was correct. So
Right.
this should be 2.55.
Right. So we got the 2.55, and I think the numbers are about correct. But
The number is correct.
the number's correct. It's just the 2.51 was wrong. The full-time faculty obligation funding, that's new money that goes ongoing. That's $1.2 million. That should pay for about 9 new faculty. And then we got our base funding increase, that is the increase in our FTES rates of about $4.75 million. So there's about $9.7 million new coming into the district. Now, going out of the increases to our budget, and I'm going to again turn to the eye chart. So if you look at page 16, these are the O-Fund expense increases, okay? So you'll see that our benefits costs went up about 2.4, and that was a 12% increase in our Anthem PPO, and a 8%, if I remember correctly, in our Anthem HMO, and our Kaiser went down 5%. Now, the Anthem PPO went from 18 down to 12 because of some good work by our third-party administrator, but also because our benefits committee folks were able to agree upon a slight adjustment in our plan, which actually saved us 5%. And we appreciate that the Faculty Association and all labor groups agreed to that change, so everybody's got the same plans now. But it saved us a significant amount of money. But even with that savings, our costs went up $2.4 million. You can see what the CalSTRS increase from 8.8 to 10.7 cost us, another $1 million. CalPERS, a very small amount this year, but they'll make up for that going forward. Fiscal, the SERP that we agreed to this year, that's an additional cost of $526,000 a year for the next 5 years. The increase in the other post-employment benefit cost for our 35 retirees, otherwise known as OPEB, is an additional $50,000 a year going forward. All of those salaries and increases and the retros and what have you added $3.5 million. The ongoing step in column, et cetera, not everybody, but most people on the basis of longevity and differentials and all those kinds of things, that's another $1 million per year. And you can see the rest of these items. The bottom line is that our income was $9.7 million and our outgo was $12.1 million. So that's not great, and there'll be more about that going forward in terms of how we hope to mitigate that going forward. Okay, now this is the bonus. This is the Prop 98 money. This is the balancing of the books even from last year. We think that there'll be another 1.8 to 3.6 million coming to us as a result of the deferred Prop 98. What was the term I used earlier on the Prop 98? When Prop 98 is going to go away? What do I call it?
When it levels off?
The leveling off. There was whatever phrase I used.
98 or 30?
98.
98. 30 is
Okay.
going on.
Let's go back real quick and see if I can find it. Just because I want to use the same terminology.
Once in a lifetime.
What was it?
You use it basically once in a life, well, Props 98, the maintenance factor.
Maintenance factor. That's what it was. Thank you. So what this represents is the maintenance factor has yet to be balanced out. So this is the payback. This is part of the payback. So we think this year from 14-15 they still owe us 1.8 to 3.6. We don't know this for a fact. This was just back of the napkin based upon stuff that we heard. When we checked on this at the budget meeting, they said, yes, you're going to have some money coming to you, and yes, we think we'll be able to tell you what that is in November, December. The Department of Finance and the California Community College office is still truing up the numbers based upon EPA dollars, based upon Prop 98 dollars, based upon how everything else balanced. They still don't have a good sense of how 14-15 is coming out in the wash. They think by November, December, they'll know, and we think we'll get some extra money, but it's not guaranteed.
So we get 4 reports from the Chancellor's office. We have the advance, which tells us how we can budget. Then we have the first report that tells us what's happening. The P1, the P2, and then there's the recalc. So if the money comes in, and we think it will come in December at the recalc reporting time. But it will only be for last fiscal year and previous fiscal years. So there's still the money that you're talking about for fiscal year 15-16 that hopefully would come in 16-17.
Right. And so this would be bonus money, but it's important to note it's one-time bonus money. And a little bit in a few more minutes, I'll show you where we think that money could end up, or a good chunk of it. Anyway, okay. So now this is. I'm going to let Joe talk. This one. This is on page 18. Joe, go ahead.
So the board often asks us how we're spending our money. And total compensation is not just our salaries, but it includes the employer mandated cost, it includes the cost that the district pays for all of our benefits. It's the total amount that goes into somebody's gross income. So what we do is we look at the total amount of money that's coming in and the percentage of that money that is used for total compensation. So as a percent of income, in fiscal year 14-15, we spent 90 cents out of every dollar on total compensation. As a percent of, so I'm sorry, that was the projected. We projected 90 cents out of every dollar. The actual was 94.3%, and that was because of the retroactive increases that we did. So if we back out the retroactive increases, we're actually at 88% of income, which is right in line of where we should be. People say that you should be at 85% of your total expense for salaries and benefits should be 85% of your budget. We're usually about 87 to 88%, so we're good. So it's a bit of an outlier. Then we look at the amount of money that we spend in total compensation related to all expenses, services, supplies, consultants, that type of thing. It's at 89.9%. If we back out the retros, it's still at 89%. So the projected for next year, for next year, for 15-16, in black is where we will be. So it drops to 81.73%. But again, it's an anomaly because what we're talking about, the 12.5 one-time dollars. If we back that out, we're back up to 89%. So again, 87, 88, 89%, or cents out of every dollar goes into our pockets.
And goes into our pockets is defined as salary, but also health,
Benefits.
welfare, HWA, health and welfare benefits, and
Social
all the
Security, workers'
and all of
comp,
the
unemployment.
employee
Employee
mandate
mandated.
expenses. Now, think about that. That means we have 10% left for Ocean to try to figure out a way to keep the AC and heating working on this campus. So for everything, maintenance, utilities,
Pens,
travel,
paper.
conferences, seminars,
IT.
hmm?
IT.
IT, everything
Mhm.
is 10%. The system, not only at this district, but in all community colleges, is not sustainable. Eventually, the state's going to have to kick in more money because we just can't. You can't survive on 10%. The 15%, the 85 to 100%, that's where they want everybody to be. But they've given up even talking about that because they know we can't be. And we're one of the more fiscally stable districts. Okay, there are a lot of districts out there that are in much worse shape than we are. Yes, sir.
Bob, just for the record, can you tell us what the difference between our FTES rate is, K-12 and CSU?
No, I don't have all those answers, but what I can tell you is that K-12 is paid at $6,000 or $7,000, I think, per ADA. I'm not sure how CSU and UC, I forget the numbers are for them, but as a percentage, the community colleges are paid less than any of the other three systems. That I think is your point. And I'll tell you that New York State, for example, they are funded at the rate of about $12,500 per FTES versus our roughly $5,000 per FTES. And they get to charge tuition and they get to keep their tuition. We get to charge tuition. We don't get to keep it. It goes back. The state takes it off of the top of our apportionment payment. So, in general, the community college system is an underfunded system with much more, with increasing demands on the services it provides. So something's going to have to give, I think. Yes, ma'am. Okay. All right. So that's that. Now, fund balances. So again, easier to see when you look at it. Beyond the 01 general fund, we have other funds in the district. So what we've done here in complete and total transparency is we have provided the beginning fund balance as of 14-15, what our revenue was in those funds as of 14-15, what the year-to-date expenditures were in 14-15, what we ended in 14-15, and what we project to be the beginning balance adjusted for the one-time dollars, that we are getting. So, remember that 12,000,004 line that I talked about? That's the beginning balance there. The 03 general restricted started with 18 million, and at the end of the year we're rolling over 1.7 million. You can see the various, now the infamous, the Capital Services Fund is a relatively new fund. It's money that we took out of Fund 41, the Capital Outlay Fund, a few years ago when we did a lease purchase of the Lancer Point system. And so we moved the money from Capital Outlay into Capital Services Fund, Fund 29, to do the debt service tied to that lease purchase of that system. The infamous Fund 41, Capital Outlay Fund, in years gone by was a piggy bank. I was in a meeting, and you'll appreciate this, Rod, with Peter Hardash on Friday, and he still speaks proudly of that.
What's he up to these days?
He still speaks proudly of what he did at PCC, and he's doing the same thing at Rancho.
Rancho beats back to Rancho.
So he's the me there, and but he speaks proudly. That's where they hide their money there. So if you guys ever going to work for that district, now you know where it is. And then we have our Fund 42, which is the Measure P, that's bond money. And you can see what that is, scheduled deferred maintenance. That's where we'll put some of that one-time money that comes in from the state, gets dumped into there. The next page, you'll see the rest of the funds that we have. Our dental coverage, we self-fund our dental. We self-fund property and liability. And then the OPEB is the other big fund that we have. This is a fund that is not in trust, but it is where when we have the $1,440 a year that we promise everybody post age 65 for life, this is we have to fund that, and it's GASB 45, and it's sitting at about $15 million. We should have closer to $18-19 million in that fund. And on the basis of the large number of retirees that we just recently have, when the actuary does his study this year, that number is likely to go up. There are many districts that are most districts are partially funded. We are in probably the top 20% of those funded on the high end. Some are completely funded. Some, like the LA Community College District, are billions in the hole. And other than the fact that they're too big to fail, they'll never have enough money in their OPEB. But
Can you just point out the workers' comp so everyone knows what that negative is?
you go ahead and do it, please.
So in the second to last column, there's a $1.9 million negative for the workers' comp fund. There was an audit finding in fiscal year 12-13 that had not been corrected for 2 years. So we actually had to fix it, which took us negative, and in this fiscal year we fixed it with some of the money from the one-time dollars that we're getting that we'll show you in a bit. But that is not a problem.
Right. And that was an accounting adjustment that had to be done primarily. Okay, so the next page, a couple of pages, are the facilities projects list. We talked about Fund 41, and this is a listing, the next few pages, of of the amounts of monies that we're going to spend, which is a total of $2.2 million on all the projects that you have listed there. Now, I will tell you, a lot of people have asked, well, how did you determine these projects? And the answer was through Ruben and the facilities committee and through other means, to talking to deans and what have you. There was two principles here. One, we would spread the money as far and wide as possible so everybody gets a little bit of something. And two, we would fund up to as much as we possibly could fund this year, which is the $2.2 million. As we go forward into our new planning and resource allocation system that Ryan Corner, Dr. Corner, and others are championing right now, this process is going to change dramatically going forward. And Ryan and his team are doing a great job rolling it out. And many of you around this table, including faculty, have participated in this new process, and it will lead to a much improved resource allocation, including how we deal with our capital outlay projects. So you can see those, and then you can see on the next page, Dr. Foster will be happy to know that his forum flooring is going to finally get replaced. You go in there, they shampoo it, and less than 24 hours later the stains keep popping up, among other things. So we're going to give the forum a little bit of a facelift. That's that last item. And then on the third page, you'll see some of the other projects. You've got all of that. And it's $2.2 million. On top of all of this, you have the IT projects, information technology projects. And you can see everything from smart classroom refresh programs, disaster recovery scoping, and that's a preliminary project to develop a plan to make certain that in a disaster, the college can quickly recover by way of IT and technology. If you think about it, our revenue is tied to students. If students cannot come to our college and function, we're not generating any revenue. If faculty do not have the systems that they need to teach those students, we don't have any revenue. So that's part of what that's about. Matthew Keeman, our IT manager responsible for our networks and wireless capacity and servers and what have you, talks regularly about how our mobile devices, whether it's our phones, our iPads, our laptops, is requiring us to double and triple the capacity of our system annually because of bandwidth and other things. All that costs money to improve, and I think we would all agree that although not perfect, the wireless and the network connectivity on this campus has improved dramatically over the last 5-6 years, and that's because of the great work of Matthew and Mark Gutierrez and the collected teams down there. Okay, so you can see what that is. That's 1.2 million. Okay, so when you add all that up, we're spending about $3.4 million out of our beginning balance of $5.3 million, leaving a $2.7 million budget. Now, annually, we try to take money out of the general fund and put it into Fund 41. This year, we took $750,000. We also get monies from students. What do they call it? The capital
Capital outlay fee.
Capital outlay fee is charged each student, so we get a certain amount of income from that every year. What's that number?
Is it 40? Oh, the total amount? It's about 1.4, I think. 1.7.
So we get we reimburse that program by at least 1.7 million per year, that fund. Plus, we try to take a little bit more money out of Fund 41. This year it was $750,000. And then we get a little bit of money out of the district rental homes on Bonnie, about $180,000 a year, I think it is. And then we also take the campus use revenue, it gets dumped into there as well, I think. So when we rent facilities for one reason, it's a small amount of money. So that's how we try to replenish Fund 41, but we don't hide any money in there. We actually use it for what it's supposed to be. Okay, now, where did that $12.5 million go, that one-time mandated money? You can see that to build back our rainy day fund, to get us up to that $16 million, because we took a chunk of it out of it to deal with salary increases and what have you, we put $3.1 million back to that reserve number. This is that accounting restructuring on the workers' comp fund. We had to put $2.5 million in there to reverse some things. That's what that asterisk talks about. We are doing what many districts are doing. If the state had their way, they would say you should take all of that $12.5 million and put it into your STRS PERS set aside. Many districts took a chunk of their set aside money or their mandated one-time money and put it into that fund for future obligations. We did a relatively conservative $1.1 million. And that's a set aside to deal with those future, and we'll show you what that's going to be in a minute. Step and column, unforeseen needs. I will tell you that unforeseen needs money of $684,000 was gone before the ink was dry on the laser printed thing coming out of the. In other words, we always have unforeseen needs, and we need that money. That money is gone. We've had to find additional monies in various places to try to fund some of these other things. And we'll talk a little bit more about that if you want to. Capital outlay fund I mentioned, the retros I mentioned, for the classified groups. You can just see the list there in terms of where we're putting these monies. You'll also notice the asterisks, and what you see with the double asterisk is that we actually are using one-time money to fund ongoing expenses, which is if we were in a budgeting class and we did that, we'd get an F on that paper. Okay, you're not supposed to do that. But in order to balance the budget this year, we did it. The board approved it. One of the reasons why we did it is because one of those SERPs, one of the SERPs that we did, the first SERP that we had, which is a $1.5 million a year cost, $1.25 million annual SERP payment for 5 years is ending this year. So that 1.25 we'll be able to throw back at the ongoing expenses. So that's part of it. Yeah.
So the earlier slide where we have $9.7 million of new revenue, ongoing dollars coming in, and 12.1 of expenses going out, this is that difference. We're using these one-time dollars to fill that gap.
Balance that $3 million gap, $2.2 million gap. So this is where our one-time money went, and again, I just want to emphasize one time, okay? It's not recurring, but this is what we did with it this year. And we think we're going to get some one-time in 16, 17 as well, but that'll be the last of it for a while. Okay, future risks. These are the things coming at us. We know that the benefit and healthcare reform, otherwise known as Obamacare, and those are risks coming at us that are going to require program design changes to mitigate those risks. We know about CalSTRS, we know about CalPERS, we know about the EPA, and we know about performance-based funding. These are things we have to keep in the back of our mind as we go forward with our budgeting. These are examples of what the Obamacare pre-reform and post-reform does to us if we don't make any adjustments in what we're doing. So in 2016, our costs are literally going up, or would be going up, from the 17.6 to the 18.2. But you see what happens from 2016 to 2020. We are looking at, first of all, you can see what the pre-reform increases are in general. But post-reform, if we don't make any adjustments, we go from a $17 million obligation to a $28 million obligation without making the adjustments that we need in order to avoid Cadillac taxes and other kinds of things that are built into that program. So these are real issues that we have to grapple with, because obviously we cannot afford to deal with these unless we grapple with them. The next slide is the CalSTRS impact. And this is unavoidable. There's nothing we can do that's going to stop this. This is a result of Governor Brown kind of unilaterally saying that we're going to fix the STRS funding situation in 40 years. He woke up one morning and he said, I think 40 years is a good amount of time to stabilize this. He could have chose 50, he could have chose 60, he could have chose 30, but he chose 40. And now how that boils down to us is that in 15-16, our contribution was 11.84%. And you'll see what's going to happen in terms of percentage. It's going to go from 11.84 to 20.
I'm sorry.
Employer mandated contributions.
Go back one page.
Up one page.
Oh, I'm sorry. Very much. CalSTRS.
29.
Sorry.
Flip it over.
There you go.
There we go.
No.
I'm right there.
All right. I hate double-sided. CalSTRS. Anyway, okay, so 10.73 to 19.10, so 9%. So $1 million goes to $6 million.
So this year, our increase over last year was 1.1 million, and our total payment to CalSTRS is 6.4.
Right, so 6.4 to 11.3, so it's a $5 million delta between 15, 16, and 2021. And you can see what the annual increases are as a result of. So we go from 10.73 to 12.58, and that's an increase. And you can see how all these numbers increase. And these are annual expenses.
And employee expenses are a portion of that's going up too.
Right.
Not as fast.
Not as fast, but employees are going to be paying more on the STRS side.
And I think it caps
And
out
the
at
state's paying more too.
And the state's paying more too. The state's
The
It's
state
the
for
state-
STIRS,
They're
for
paying more
STIRS,
than I think.
yeah, for STIRS, they're doing quarterly, not reimbursements, but quarterly, they're giving
Deposit,
STIRS
yeah.
on a quarterly basis a deposit of money to offset the cost.
Right,
But-
but it's not a percent, it's just a chunk of money. It doesn't, it's not dollar for dollar in the increase.
No, it's not, and it's not specific to a college, it's just for
It's
the
a
fund
pot,
itself.
the fund itself.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, didn't explain that perfectly, but I think you get the point that 10.73 to 1910 takes us from 6.3 to 11.3, $5 million more annually, and every year you can see what those increases are, and they're unavoidable. And as Rod mentioned, the employee is going to get stuck with a contribution as well on their side. Now to CalPERS. I won't repeat what I said, but you can see that it's even a larger increase percentage-wise. And for whatever reason, they gave us a break in 15-16, 16-17, and where we really begin to feel it is going to be 17-18 and beyond. And the net increase is going to be $2 million. Okay? Okay, and then this is a discussion on EPA and the impact if it expires. And you'll see at 14-15, we got $19.6 million of money. We are estimating for 15-16 less, but it's TBD because it really depends on the how much sales tax revenue there is and how much people pay in their personal income tax. And the last couple of years, it has been higher than was budgeted. So that's been good for us.
Can I?
Yes.
So we did budget workshops to walk people through this presentation, and people were surprised. I don't know if everyone at this table knows, but when you see what we were told the estimate for 13-14 was going to be 13.7 million, and we got 15.5 million. That difference is not additional money to the district. There are 4 pots of money that we get our funds from. There's state apportionment, there's local taxes, there's the EPA, and then there are the enrollment fees. So if the state apportionment that PCC is going to get is $100 million, and we're being told we're going to get $15 million in EPA, but we actually get $20 million in EPA, we don't still get the $100 million from the state. It drops to
We
$95
take the
million.
5 out.
So everything balances out. We don't get more just because you see more numbers here. Everything offsets those other buckets.
And the buckets again are?
Not enrollment. Enrollment, EPA, state apportionment, and then local property
Property
taxes.
tax. And all of that equals whatever they say we're going to, based upon the FTES. And the point is that you don't get rewarded for doing better. They just swap the money around basically. Although you do get rewarded because you get the growth and the base goes up. But we don't. Now this is sort of a summary chart that actually Ross Selvage, one of our board members, put together. And what he was basically saying is he was kind of putting all the risks out there, and he was starting with the revenue from Prop 30, the $18 million, and he's saying by 1920 that's going to go away, so we're down $18 million. And then he's looking at CalSTRS and what it cost in 15-16 and what it will cost in 19-20. And he's showing a net increase of $5.1 million. CalPERS, he's doing the same thing, 2.7, 4.2, a net increase of 1.48. And then the medical plan, if we did absolutely nothing, our costs could go from 18 million to 28 million, a net increase of 10.7 million. So what he's saying is that when you add the minus 18 million and the which will actually, when you add those two numbers together, you are looking at a deficit between 15-16 and 19-20. We have to find another $35.5 million to operate this district annually if nothing changes. Now, when I look at something like that, there isn't any amount of cost efficiencies or anything that we can do that's going to make up $36 million. We all need to maintain our benefits. We all need to maintain our, at least the cost of living. We all need to do what we need to do if we can. and we all need to help ourselves. But somewhere down the line, I think the state's going to have to help out. But to the degree that it doesn't, and to the degree that we are, from a fiduciary point of view, we are obligated to provide a balanced budget every year. We need to live within our means. So the question then becomes, how are we going to allocate the resources that we have? What programs are going to offer? What level of benefits will we have? How much, will we stop heating the buildings on every other Tuesday? I mean, what are we going to do in order to live within our means and unless our means increase in some significant way? It's just a reality going forward. And that's what Ross put this chart together to say, in 4 short years out, we got a $35.5 million problem unless the state, in my mind, gives us more money, and of course we react as best we can to the situation. So that's a positive way to end my presentation. Okay. So, what do you want to do with that information? Anything? Comments, thoughts?
Well, we learned in the benefits committee at our last meeting that our experience issue looks better for this year than it has in the past. And hopefully that's the result of the fact that we've got younger faculty here than we have had for a long time, and that they just don't use their medical benefits as often or as expensively. But that remains to be seen because we're not through the year yet.
Right. And so when Rod talks about experience factor, that's actually people, as he said, using the benefits. And we've had, in the last several years, we've had a lot of people who had, unfortunately, very serious illnesses. Or we have a lot of people who have, not ongoing, there's another word for that. Chronic illnesses like diabetes and things that require expensive maintenance drugs to maintain. And the older your employee base, the more likely it is that you're going to have people who are on those maintenance drugs, or unfortunately have serious illnesses that need to be treated.
And then one other issue is that for a long time, a certain percentage, and it's a big percentage of our retirees, have paid the ridiculous price of keeping their Anthem Blue Cross PPO. So they're still in our risk pool. And at end life, you're going to spend 2/3 of the money you've ever spent on medicine in your life in the last 6 months of your life. And that's part of our experience factor. So Julie Mosier is doing a great job of steering our recent batch of retirees in a little bit different direction, and to more affordable products that wrap around Medicare and take them out of our pool.
Right, which is really an important thing. And Julie is doing an exceptional job with the whole benefits package. I see Mary Aaron and a couple of others leafing through the 8-page document. Maybe we should spend a few minutes talking about that. So on the inside front page is the personnel count as of the time that we did that in these various categories. And these two are kind of moving targets because it depends on who's retired, who's resigned, who's this, who's that. But these are approximate numbers of where people are and what assignments they're in for both the academic side of the house and the classified side of the house.
Well, do you know when this was?
Joe, approximate point in time.
These are the dates. One view is, and then 8/17, and then a week later.
Okay.
Right.
And so this is people, leaving or coming in, and yeah.
But
Even
again,
though
I
it's a week
wouldn't
difference.
take these completely, totally to the bank,
They're not.
but
And
it's close.
And these are just filled positions.
Right.
I mean, the heading has a mistake in it. It says budgeted personnel positions. It's not
Okay.
budgeted. It's just the filled
existing.
positions.
Yeah.
So, as an
Existing.
example, Maggie Ori, who was our payroll supervisor, was here on the 17th, but she was gone on the
Okay.
18th, so she's not captured in the column under the 24th.
So this is a page we're working on, and we'll improve for next year.
Yeah, we weren't sure how to capture it.
Page 3 this is just a laundry list of the extra funds. You'll notice we had total district appropriations of $235 million.
Those are just the expenses.
The expenses. It
So
doesn't.
it doesn't include the additional, like the OPEB fund, That's $16 million. We're not gonna spend $16 million this year. We anticipate spending 1.2. So this is not all of the dollars that we've got in the bank. It's just what we're gonna be
This is
spending.
what we appropriate, we're gonna appropriate in 15-16, or spend.
Right.
Then we get on the inside page that's labeled as one of eight. This is basically our income and the different categories of our income. And the asterisks that you can read below sort of provide some explanation. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 item, which is the 8612 one-time funds. Is that one? No,
Yep.
where's 5?
5 is the state mandated. So we have a contract where if something was not claimed, then we're able to submit a, for lack of a better word, an invoice for it, and we get $28 per FTES.
Right, so what I was actually, it's the 4 asterisk one that I was looking at, 8612. That's that 12
That's the one-time dollars.
million one-time dollars. And that was paid at our at $28 per FTS. That's how that was calculated. Or 40. What was it? 28 is what we get the one-time mandated.
That's the block grant.
The block
So
grant.
I thought you were talking about the one at the bottom, 8682 state mandated. So if we don't get paid for something, we have an agreement with the state. They go after the dollars. We get $28 per FTES. What you're talking about is 8612, which are the one-time dollars that we're getting from the state, the 12.5.
Yeah. So here's what I was actually saying. That was paid out on the basis of 23,000 or 22,000 something FTES.
But it was like 200.
Yeah, that big bucket.
Right.
that they-
And we
they
got
allocate on
our
FTS.
percentage of that. We got our roughly 1.9% of that. The $28 per FTS, just so everybody understands that, we sign a waiver every year that we say we're not going to charge you for our actual mandated costs. We're going to accept $28 per FTS. And that's what that is. So they basically take 28 times 23,000 something FTS, and that's the money that we collect. Yeah, we have an option of doing what you said, Joe, but we haven't done that, and most districts don't do that these days. They buy into the to the straight payout, 28 per. Anyway, anyway, you can see the income and how it's all comes together in different places, and certainly offline, if anybody has any questions, Diane or LaCanya or Joe would be happy to try to confuse you. Then we get over to the 2 of 8, and you see all the different local dollars. There's some adjustments. I want to give kudos to LaCanya and to Diane and to Joe. They've worked very hard in the last 2 budgets to more correctly allocate funding to the right line items in the right ways. They've worked hard to refund positions that were not funded in the budget but were filled. We went through a period where we were sweeping, people retired or people left, and we left the positions in the budget, but we left them unfunded in the budget. So people were being rehired, put in those positions, but there was no money there to pay for them. And there was, what, Joe, would you say 30 at least?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, of people, and that represented, if each employee is on average $100,000 with benefits.
With all their benefits.
With benefits and everything, that was $3 million that we had to reallocate and find and clean up. And LaCanya, in particular, has been pulling out her hair for quite a while trying to sort this out and continues to do it. We expect by the 16-17 budget we'll be almost done with all the adjustments, and Diane and her team have done a really great job. Anyway, you can see where all the income is. We don't have time to go through all the different categories. And then you see the summary on the back of page 3 of 8, where the different revenue summaries. You'll notice our student enrollment fees. Well, you notice that property tax, 22 million, projected to go up 27 million. As real estate appreciates, and as properties turn over, and as more and more what we call baby boomers and whatever the generation was before that, sell their homes and move on. They sell houses that they paid $40,000 for $1.2 million. So the property tax goes from, $1,600 a year to $15,000 a year. Okay, that funnels its way through the system, and it takes us from a projected from 22.8 million all the way up to almost 27 million in revenue. Now the bad news is that money isn't going to come to us. It's just going to be taken off the top. Okay, but still, you can see the boom and bust economy of California and how it's tied to real estate and people making enough money to be able to buy $1.2 million houses and pay $15,000 a year in property taxes.
So this is the page that shows the three buckets that offset each other.
Right.
The only line that's not here is the EPA money.
Right.
So those are the four buckets. If you get more in one area, then the other areas drop.
Mary, you're in.
Yes, if we had growth, why do we have what explains the decline in student enrollment fees?
So last year, the 10.3 million,
Mhm.
there was a correction that we had to do, and we didn't catch it before the budget was adopted. So if you look at the top of the column, it's an adjusted column, which means that the numbers that were adopted were adjusted.
Mhm.
So we had to move $1.5 million or $1.9 million
Okay.
from another category to that 10. So the 9.4,
So
the
that's what the
9.5 is a solid
Okay.
number.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're absolutely correct though. As we grow, the enrollment fee should grow too. Except,
But they're, okay.
But it looks
Uh,
backwards.
but
Right.
bog waivers. We have to remember that 68% or higher, 80%,
Something.
80%, Dave would know, of our students are on Board of Governor waivers,
Mhm.
which means they're not paying the tuition, right? Because they're on waivers.
And the state doesn't reimburse us for that.
No, because it would be money in, money out, right?
Well, it's all part of this bucket, so if
Mhm.
we didn't have the bog waivers, we'd get more in enrollment fees, but then they'd take it out of our general apportionment.
I
So
see.
that
Okay.
$119
Yeah.
million total, that never changes. So if we
Mhm.
collect 30 million in property taxes, one of those other numbers will go down.
In fact,
The
Mhm.
total will stay
our
the
actual
same.
cash, it's like 68 million, 60-something million that actually comes to us from the state.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
this year, we're looking at 82 from state general apportionment.
Yeah.
And that includes CP.
Okay, so
Oh, it
let's look at
does?
the expenses.
Yeah.
You can
Oh, I
see,
didn't know that.
now,
Okay.
Just the 119.
Okay.
Yeah.
under expenses, you can see on the academic side where the money is going, and even these numbers don't totally reflect exactly what money is in what pot or what was shifted around. So there's going to be some, when you look at the 14-15 adjusted or actual, and you see the blanks, for example, that are in 15-16, why don't you guys speak to that briefly in terms of what you did to try to correct some things?
So we took, in the system, there are individuals or employees who are not coded correctly. So what we tried to do was collapse lines in the budget that were small dollar amounts and put them in the correct coding or the correct line. So where you see a zero amount, it was either because the dollar amount was so small or it did not belong there. So we moved, for example, the 1210, the non-teaching over, no, not that one. That's
That
not a
is-
good example.
What, 13?
The instruction hourly other 1321, we were able to move that 22,000 into a different line, which was would more accurately capture what that person was doing and being paid for.
And then the distributed reserve, that 500,000, that large additional number,
That
that is
was-
what pays for the
additional
additional
office hours that
hour.
were negotiated. So it'll be
Oh,
moved
okay.
into
For
the
the
right
adjuncts.
lines.
Mhm.
and it'll be shifted around when we get there.
And so and it's spelled out at the bottom, I think.
Right. And then the other thing, which is going to change for next year, but within for example, the 1320 line, the 20,295,000, that includes the benefits
For
as well
adjuncts.
for adjuncts. Now next year we're gonna split those out, so there isn't quite $20 million for adjuncts. There's something on the order of 17 something. Okay. So the enrollment management office and the deans are working with that number. The idea is to achieve the 23,158 or whatever the number of FTEs are on a lower cost basis. So that's what they're working to do right now. So
Okay.
those numbers are a little bit misleading, because it's really not as much as that in that particular
So
line.
1320 is pay or benefit?
It's,
This year we collapsed it into both. So previous to this year's budget,
Mm-hmm.
all of the adjuncts
I mean, they don't really get
salaries
that much.
were put into every cost center that the district had adjuncts working out of. And we were not able to track the dollars. So if you look at that line, last year we budgeted 17.2, but we spent 22.7.
Uh-huh.
So in order to manage it more effectively, we put everything into one line in the budget this year.
Mhm.
And in the first 3 months, we see it's not working. I mean, it's working in the sense that we can manage it, but it's
Right.
not a fair representation when we say this is salary and this is benefits, because it's both rolled into that 20,300,000.
so we're gonna
So
split
you're
it back
gonna
out again
separate them back
Those
out
two lines.
next year.
into two lines, but they'll still be aggregate, and you're saying they were together, they were in cost centers of the academic
It's-
disciplines?
it's-
Okay.
And this
So
year
they'll
it's one.
they'll stay outside the academic disciplines, but there'll be two lines,
Yeah,
one for
salaries
pay
and
and one for
benefits.
benefits.
Yeah.
Okay,
Very good.
got it.
All right,
So can I just explain the anomaly in the total?
yes.
So in the first column, what we budgeted last year for all of the academic salaries was 62,400,000. We spent 67,600,000. That was because of the retros. And then we had 35 faculty retire, and then their replacements were at a much lower annual rate. So even though we spent 67 million, and this year we have 63 million, it's not an incorrect number, it's actually correct. The 67 million looks strange because of the retroactive increases.
Mhm.
And the good news is that we went into this budget knowing that we were underfunded in terms of what we were going to need for adjunct instructors. But because of the efficiencies that everyone is contributing to, including our faculty significantly by taking a couple of extra students, we had a $4.5 million hole that is now down to about a little bit less than 2, and we still have the spring semester and trailing summer, the first summer, to try to balance that out. So that's good, because at the end of the day, we need as much money as we can to deal with all the other issues we have to deal with on this campus and still provide access. So that's good news. All right, so then you can see what on the classified side, where money is going for all the different categories and
And can I just explain that one too?
yes.
So we budgeted last year 24.5, we spent 24.4, but it increased to 26.8. The increase is what Bob alluded to earlier, where we thought we corrected those 30 positions that were not funded last year, and we didn't capture everything. So LaConya really did a person-by-person breakdown and captured every position and made sure they were funded in fiscal year 15-16. So that's why it looks like there's such a large jump.
Okay. Then you can see the laundry list of employee benefits on 5 of 8. Everything from our PERS and STIRS to the APPLE benefits. APPLE stands for Accumulation Program for Part-Time and Limited Service Employees. Our adjuncts have a combined, their benefits, some are on STIRS, some are on APPLE. There's 1 or 2 that are CFT somehow classified. I don't know how it works, but there's a few outliers there. But everybody has some level of benefits that they receive. And this is the cost associated with all of that. Some $30 million for our benefits this year. Supplies and materials. Interesting that everybody was so concerned, as they should be, about not having enough money for supplies, but I would point out that we budgeted $1.8 million, and we only spent $839,000 last year. So this year we dropped it a little bit, but our problem is not money as much as it's the allocation of the money. And so we are imploring our academic affairs people to take a look at this horizontally and think about reallocating some of the supply money to try to solve some of these problems. Even with that said, that $684,000 that I said is already gone, much of that has already gone to additional supply money. But you can see that and they're working on that. And then services. We talk about, overall, we talk about the 1,000s, the 2,000s, the 3,000s, the 4,000s, and now the 5,000s. It's where our chart of accounts is set up 5,000 are basically services. So all these are different services that we fund and pay for, about $17 million. Up significantly. Why is it up significantly, Joe, would you say?
Well, these are the one-time dollars that are set aside to go into the CalSTRS set aside or the workers' comp. It's moving from Fund 1 to those other funds. So if you look at the bottom, we're on page 6.
6 of 8.
So if you look at 5189, that distributed reserve with that star, that's $1.3 million. That's the CalSTRS and the CalPERS. So the one-time dollars come to us in unrestricted dollars. We are moving those dollars into another account to make sure that it's there for future increases, so it doesn't impact the district on an annual basis. If you look on the next page, page 7 of 8, and you look at 7310 non-mandatory transfers, that $4.6 million, again, those are the one-time dollars, that $12.5 million. That 4.6 equals to the money that we're setting aside for capital services, capital outlay, workers' comp, dental coverage, and other post-employment benefits. So it's in Fund 1, and now we need to transfer it into the other funds.
Okay. And then on page 8, this is the summary page. And basically, you see our income of $160.3 million. That includes the reserves, that includes our income, that includes the beginning balance, that includes everything. So people say, what's your operating budget? $160 million.
Just in Fund 1.
Just in Fund 1, operating 01 unrestricted. That's our operating budget. It does not include 03. Do we have a total of 03? We did have a total. What's the total
It's in
of
the
03? That's the appropriation, but I'm just
27?
curious.
No,
Is
in
there
your
a balance?
PowerPoint.
Yeah, what is that? It's there.
03, this year we're looking at 1.8 million. But what that means is that we had, well, let's look at last year. So we started last year at 2 million. We had 18 million in revenue. We spent 18 million. We ended the year at 1.8. We began this year at 1.
So let's just say that it's 160 plus another 20 million in 03. So that 180 is what provides all the services for our students and pays all the bills around here. Then there's another 38 to 40 million that is financial aid money that comes into the district from the federal government and goes out to our students, and some state money, about $40 million. And then the rest of it is just other funds we have. So when you add all that up, it's $250 million. Okay, it's in that range. And then you'll see on this page, you see the revenue, you see the appropriations. So that 3.7 million, which has now been restated as being part of the contingency. So that's what that 3.692 is. Total expenses, and then total compensation. So basically, out of our budget of 160 million, 121 million is people, right? In the 01 general fund, people. Mm-hmm. And then you saw the percentages that Joe talked about earlier. So in a nutshell, that's it. I will also say that our audits in the last several years have been, there's not been any. Yeah, last time I gotta look at this until next year. Our audits in the have been no material weaknesses. We have come out very, very clean. There's been little things that we've had to fix, like you would have in any kind of an organization our size. But again, notwithstanding one particular trustee candidate's depiction of our fiscal management, we're in pretty good shape. And I will also say we changed auditors, was it 3 years ago or 2 years ago?
2 years ago. They're in their third year.
BLS, and we did that as a result of some other issues that we had, not with the auditor, but just the time was right to change auditing
You used to
firms.
have Gil Blankenmeyer and Lawson.
We used to have BTD, Vabernick, Trine, and Daly, and now we've got BLS, Vicente, Lloyd, and Stutzman, I think. And BLS is tough, much tougher than BTD was. So they look under rocks we didn't even know we had, to be honest with you. Yes.
I'm sorry, Bob. Excuse me. we have a meeting scheduled at 4 in here.
We're outta here.
No, we're gonna move it, so you don't have to.
You are too darn good,
Okay,
Alicia.
come on,
Nice
just
to see
wanted
you.
to let you
Thank
know.
you. I didn't know.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
No
Good to
worries.
see you. So we have strong auditors, and that helps with raw salvage when we meet with
This
Ross.
is for the record, Bob.
This is for the.
He's
oh,
gonna
I
watch
forget.
this.
I forgot. He's here. I forgot about that. She's just so quiet back there. He probably will watch it too. But it does help with raw salvage. He's doing his job as a trustee.
Good save.
Good job, exactly. But it does help us with Russ and others. So we are in better shape than others might think we are. Okay, and I'm proud of that. Okay, so we are now past time. Anything more on this topic? What topics do you want to talk about going forward? You know, one thing for sure, Ryan and others are all engaged in this planning and cycle right now, and maybe Joe or Diane remembers the calendar, the timeline for when things will roll up to this committee. You remember that offhand?
I think it comes to this committee
December.
in March.
Oh.
Is it
But there's
January?
a planning,
I
there's
think
a,
January or February, because we're supposed to get it in March.
Right, it goes to fiscal in
right.
March
Yeah.
completed. So I think come
there's the
January,
retreat.
we're gonna be working on some
mini,
stuff here.
the multi-committee
Mhm.
retreat.
Hmm?
There's a
The
multi-committee retreat.
And that's in January.
Oh, okay, that will do.
It's, yeah.
So what I envision happening, the way the process works is everybody right now is engaged in their program reviews and their working through task stream, putting their budget requests together. The way that's going to work then is that that will roll up through the deans, through the academic vice presidents and the student services vice presidents and the business services vice presidents. And there will eventually, it'll roll up to the two assistant superintendents and the superintendent president to make determinations as to what the final budgets will be. Along the way, there will be input from Brac, input from College Council, input from different groups as we use the performance measures that are in those program reviews to determine what the resource allocation is. Last year, when Joe did the budget, there were several binders worth of information representing, give us some numbers, the high end
So
numbers.
there were so through the budget instructions and what we got back, there were 4 components. There were requests for people, fixed assets, facilities, and supplies. So supplies, even though the budget instructions and during our presentations we said ask for what you need, not what you want, we got $180 million worth of requests, and our budget isn't that big.
For supplies.
Period.
Oh,
I mean,
for-
our
yeah.
total budget is
Okay,
like
okay, I thought you were
145.
still referencing supplies.
So fixed assets, we had $25 million worth of requests. So that's when facilities looked at the request and came up with the 2.4 million that's in the budget.
Out of 25 million.
And at 25 million, we had $2.5 million worth of requests for fixed assets, and then I think it was 10 or 11 million worth of personnel requests. 89 positions, 10, 11 million dollars.
Right. So the point is, through that process, and so this year, through our planning and resource allocation process, the goal is to allocate our resources based upon planning priorities. So you've got the educational master plan, you've got the board goals, you've got the strategic plan that keys off of the educational master plan and the board goals. They are all completion, closing the achievement gap oriented goals. So when the decisions are made as to where the resources are going to go, it's going to be based upon those goals and moving the metrics on the number of degrees, the number of transfers, the number of workforce education certificates that are generated. It'll be based upon the metric of closing the achievement gap for example, for Latino and African American students. If you look at our achievement gap graph, you see the Asian students are up here, about 7 to 9% below are the Caucasian students, and then there's about a 30-point gap between the Caucasian and the Latino students, and then there's a further gap 5 or 6 points between the Latino and the African American. So the goal, when you talk about that achievement gap, is to close the middle as much as possible, and definitely bring up African American achievement from here. So the money that we invest, you know, the district resources will be invested in those types of programs to help solve that. That's one example of that. The completion would be defined as moving the number of degrees from like 2,500 associate degrees last year, whatever. I think that number is relatively close. Try to get that to 2,700 or 2,800 or something. And the number of transfers, whatever those numbers are, and the number of certificates, whatever those numbers are. So our resource allocation should be focused on those key metrics, which are noted in the, specifically in the strategic plan and the board goals. So when the accreditation come visit us almost a year from now, they will see that our budget and resource allocation methodology, our planning, was tied to from the goals that were established, and how we allocated resources to achieve those goals, knowing full well that we don't have enough money to allocate to everybody. The methods of budgeting that we've done in the past has been pretty much rollover, and the world is saying you can't operate that way anymore. And the rollover, I think that supply thing is a classic example of that. We've rolled it over year in and year out, and as a result of it, people are dying for supplies over here where they really need them. There are people who don't need the supply dollars, so they just sit there all year. And if you're doing your planning correctly, you are moving dollars where they should be in the first place. And that's kind of where now, Rome was not built in a day, and this budget process is not going to be fixed in a year. It's going to take several years for this to all settle in. But by the time the accrediting team arrives, they'll see the system is in place. We'll have one full budgeting cycle through this. That's why we've accelerated this. It's not going to be perfect, but we'll be able to show them that the 16-17 budget was predicated and delivered on the basis of a top-to-bottom planning model. Okay, you guys have heard more than enough of me.
I need to talk to you about an email I got. Do you have your phone?
Mm-hmm.
Can you look and then come up?
Yeah, sounds like a good time
Yeah.
to be had.
Are we adjourned?
Are we
Moving
done?
to adjourn?
We are moving to
I move
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Okay. All right, so we'll come up with an agenda. But if anybody has agenda items they specifically want us to talk to, let Lizette know and we'll get them on the agenda. Thank you all very much.